Hello and welcome to another edition of Critical Q&A, the show where I answer your questions based on what you have sent me by email at askchrisshelton@gmail.com or have left for me in the comment section of my Q&A videos. If you leave questions in the non-Q&A videos, I may or may not get them. And if you put them on my Critical Clips channel, I may or may not get them. But if you put them on my main channel in my Q&A videos, then I have a better chance of picking up your questions and putting them into my question queue. This very long document I've had for a number of years that I keep adding and subtracting from with your questions. So go ahead and leave those questions in the comments, or better yet, email them to me. Another thing I wanted to say is my analytics are telling me that only a little less than half of you who watch my shows are subscribed to my channel. And that was very interesting for me. I just looked that up the other day. So if you are not subscribed to my channel and you're here watching my content, go ahead and click that little subscribe button and the little bell to get notifications of when new content goes up, because I'm posting every Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and there are more videos coming. All right, that all being said, I hope you guys got a chance to check out the podcast I did this week. It was really only a half hour with Rachel Bernstein. We had a great little chat about Cult Recovery 101 and some basics having to do with that. And I really feel that everybody who watches this channel should know this information. This is valuable and insightful and useful information, not just for dealing with cult members, but also for dealing with people who have extremist, headspaces and mindsets. And how do you deal with that? How do you talk to it? How do you, put up with it on Thanksgiving? I mean, there's all these questions people have about how to deal with people that they disagree with. And that is an awful lot of what is covered on this channel. And I really hope that the content that I put out about all this cult stuff is seen and understood to have much broader context and implications for you guys. There's a lot of useful stuff here. So that all being said, let's go ahead and get on with your questions this week. We have some pretty good ones, and I want to dive right into it. Nick C. L. Ron Hubbard was a prolific writer, perhaps too prolific, even for Scientology. It is my understanding that over the years, a number of books written by Hubbard and published by the Church of Scientology were discontinued for various reasons, some by Hubbard himself, others by Miscavige. Is this a correct understanding? If it is, here's a hypothetical question. A person walks into a Scientology org and wants to buy a book that's been out of print for 30 or 50 years. What would a staff member tell them? Obviously, that might depend on the staff member's level of knowledge. A young staffer who has never heard of the title might give a different answer than an older staffer who might remember the title from days past, or a second-gen staffer who may have seen it on their parents' bookshelf. Or perhaps there is an answer every staff member is trained to give in such situations. Hey, Nick, thank you for this. It's a great question. There have been a number of publications over the years that the Church of Scientology has published or endorsed with L. Ron Hubbard's name on them, and sometimes other books that were published and produced by other authors, other Scientologists. Ruth Minshall is a name that comes to mind right away. She was a woman who wrote a few different books that centered around Scientology concepts, and she wrote those in the 70s, and they were quite popular. She actually sort of translated the tone scale into some more useful life practical knowledge. And she had a book called Miracles for Breakfast, which I grew up on and very much informed my morality, because she was explaining how to use basic Scientology concepts in a family situation to deal with your kids and stuff like that, and make them more responsible little people and that kind of thing. And some of the principles were actually quite good, like be honest with your parents, be in communication with them, actually talk to them. That was very helpful and useful advice for me when I was a kid. So that all went by the wayside when anything that was not L. Ron Hubbard was officially canceled. And that was in the 1980s. I don't remember exactly when, but that came down hard. And that was like anything that's not 100% on source. And this was pretty much a drive that really got legs, in my Scientology experience at least, after L. Ron Hubbard died and Miscavige took over. There was this whole thing. And there were a number of releases, a number of events and things that happened in the 80s and moving forward where Miscavige wanted to, kind of codify everything as 100% verified on source. And this is where this kind of campaigning is the reason why some books and materials were gotten rid of. I'm thinking here about a book called Hymn of Asia. This was a title. I actually have an original manuscript, a copy, rather, I should say, of the typed manuscript with some notes on it. One of these days I'm going to have to do a show on that. But that Hymn of Asia book was a very, very important work that Hubbard wrote, where he basically claimed to be the reincarnation or the realization of this old Buddhist prophecy that Hubbard invented. I mean, it really was, there's sort of this Maitreya prophecy, but Hubbard added to it. He said things like the guy's going to come back with flaming red hair from the West and unite the West and the East and this kind of thing. And he really just kind of molded this whole legend, this Buddhist legend around himself and tried to pawn this off to Scientologists, and he succeeded until some actual Buddhists got involved. And I'm only conjecturing here, but what happened was in the early 2000s, a set of Buddhist monks were brought to Clearwater to flag and toured the place. And apparently this little sect, we were told, this is what we were told, is that they thought L. Ron Hubbard actually fit the bill and that they were all excited and they went back to China or wherever they were from. And they were going to spread the word about this, and then it died. It just died. It just died. And it was probably all just a bunch of crap, right? They probably came and looked at Flag and went like, yeah, whatever. I'm not sure what actually happened there, but I will say that after that, you couldn't find a Hymn of Asia anywhere. Maybe it was a bit before that Hymn of Asia had actually gone out of circulation. It was only available for a long, long time. Hymn of Asia was printed and reproduced. And in the 1990s, they actually even made an opera out of the book. They put it all to music. And this was a presentation. They produced a DVD or a CD, rather. They did a live concert on L. Ron Hubbard Way of the Hymn of Asia as a musical piece. So it was still an active thing in the 90s, but by the 2000s, you couldn't find a Hymn of Asia anywhere, and nobody talked about it. And nobody in Scientology now refers back to that live edition of it. It's just kind of gone, and there was really never any word on why. It was just kind of gone. And I remember being in and wondering about that, like, that's weird. Why would that be? And not really having any answer for it, because we were never told that Hymn of Asia was off source or was not L. Ron Hubbard. But for some reason, it was allowed to just disappear anyway. And maybe people wrote reports. Maybe people questioned this. Maybe there were people who were like, hey, what the hell? But there was really never any answer given, any solid answer as to why it disappeared. It was just gone. There have been other books in Scientology's history. That's the most interesting story I have to tell about this, because it was just so bizarre. There was just no explanation at all. And I think that if you were to ask any staff about it, most young staff, as you refer to in your question, would not even remember Hymn of Asia or have known anything about it. Older staff like me, back from the 90s backwards, would have remembered it. But I think we would just be kind of, I don't know what happened to it. It's just kind of, I don't know. There were other books, though, and other things like Ruth Minshall's books. We would have said, well, yeah, but they weren't really on source. See, they weren't really verified as L. Ron Hubbard. And L. Ron Hubbard is source. So if it's not from L. Ron Hubbard, it's no good. This is the standard way that Miscavige gets rid of stuff, is he just labels it as not L. Ron Hubbard, not source, even if it is. He'll just say it's not, and that's how he gets rid of stuff. So, in fact, that's one way that he got rid of the RPF, apparently, is he said it was not on source. He said it was written by somebody else. And true enough, it was. But the fact that he acknowledges that openly now and tells Scientologists that is amazing. Ken Urquhart is the guy who came up with the RPF, or at least wrote the initial issues on it. Actually, I should back up. He's not the one who came up with it, but he is the one who actually wrote the initial issues. And Hubbard is the one who came up with the idea. Let's be clear about that part. But anyway, you could then say, oh, well, it was never on source, so we're just going to get rid of it, and we're not going to think twice about that. And so that's what happened there. As far as books go, let's see. Child Scientology is a lecture. Child Dianetics was a book that was a compendium of Hubbard data from various lectures that he gave that was put together by the Hubbard Dianetics Research Foundation back in 1951 or 50. Yeah, I think it was 1951. And that book is totally gone now. Child Dianetics is not on source, right? And so that book is no longer published by Scientology as far as I know. Let's see, were there other books? Not sure. Nothing else coming to mind straight away. There were other pamphlets and other lots and other little books and booklets and things that were published over the years that have come and gone for various reasons. But all of them would, if you were to ask somebody, as you said in your question here, well, what happens if you ask staff members about this? You'll get different answers, but basically they'll fall into two camps. I don't know. I've never heard of that. I couldn't say anything about that. Or, oh, it must be off source, or it must somehow, there must be something wrong with it that it's no longer being published. And those would be the two things you would basically hear from staff about things like that. Otherwise, you'd hear, yeah, actually, those are pretty much the only two answers you're going to get. So there you go. DK. I recently received a magazine from the Church of Scientology, L. Ron Hubbard Hall, Journey with Ron, aka junk mail. I noticed the name of my ex-Reg from CC listed as an elite member, contributor. I couldn't find anywhere on the internet how much he had to cough up to get that type of status, but it had to be a lot. This made me wonder if he's been fired as a Reg because of the chase wave, then he must be doing an amends project. If he's still a Sea Org member, he really should not have the money to become an elite member of LRH Hall, unless he made commissions as a Reg. Do Regs make a commission on the donations of their public/victims? Would you know what percentage? Hi, DK. Thank you very much for this question. I have verified right now that the commission system in Scientology for Regs or salespeople is no longer really a thing and hasn't been for quite some time. When I left, it had already been kind of nixed. The deal is that commissions are paid, but what happens is that percentage goes into the staff pay sum as a whole. So all the staff get a little bit of that commission action on every sale that happens. And the sales are, of course, for materials, lectures, books, stuff like that, and service sales. I guess there's a commission on service sales. Now, but I don't know what the percentages are, and I don't know how they break that down, because that changes all the time. There are internal finance systems that are not based on, that are not directed by Hubbard, that have changed many, many times over the years in terms of how much of a bonus do people get, how much are the staff units worth, because the whole staff the pay system is based on units. Each post has a set number of units assigned to it, and each unit, let's say it's $5 this week, and you have 5 units for your job, so you're making $25 this week, right? That's how the unit system works. But how much the unit is and how it's determined and how much of a percentage of the income it is, those things change based on Miscavige and the finance guys putting together the various systems. But commissions have always been kind of a thing, mostly for the public, but for a long, long time, the staff Regs, the Sea Org Regs and staff Regs, the salespeople were making commissions. They were making, I think it was 10% on service, 15% on books and materials. And I, for example, when I was a Reg at AO in the early 2000s, for a few months there, about 6 months, I was a Reg, and I was making some nice bonuses off of those commissions. I was concentrating on selling lectures, and I was really good at it. And so I would always try to get that sweet commission money because it was coming to me personally. And that was nice as a Sea Org member. Finally make a little bit of money. And by that, I mean I was making a couple $100 a week rather than $50 a week. And in the Sea Org, I was flush with cash for a little while, but it was only for that little 6-month period. And then they took me off and I went back into the tech area. So anyway, since that time, they changed the policy. Miscavige did in the mid 2000s, where those staff commissions, this happened when the basics came out, by the way. That's during that whole crazy call in and everybody's going nuts selling. All the staff were on sales. The commission system changed. And rather than getting Sea Org members rich off of the commissions they were making, which was happening in some cases, rich meaning they were making a lot of money on these commissions, we can't have any of that, right? So they killed that. And the commissions then went into the general staff sum. So then you had a few people doing all the sales for the organization as a whole, but everybody benefiting from it. And the idea with the theory behind this was that, it was going to get everybody incentivized to contribute to the call-in and the basic sales. But what it really did is punish the producers, right? Because, you don't get anything for your production, because everybody gets your work, right? Gets your production. Say what you will about communism and all that, but people don't really cotton very well to that. When you are doing the work and then you have to share it with all these other people who aren't doing the work, it can be a little grating on you, right? Just saying, that was the reaction within the world of Scientology. That was the reaction of the Regs. Everybody was like, what? But that's what happened. It's been that way ever since. So there are no reg commissions that are going to individual regs, to answer your question, DK. And that means that your ex-reg is either no longer in the Sea Org and is making money some other way, or he has borrowed money, or he somehow got an inheritance. Happens all the time. And when inheritances are gotten by Sea Org members, they are pounced upon to donate all that money to Scientology immediately and at once. And they are told very blatantly that they are out ethics and scumbags if they don't. So, so there's an awful lot of pressure brought to bear on people who get money who are still in the Sea Org. This also, when you get trust funds or you get, any Social Security even. Anyway, so, because Scientology, let's remember, it's always about the money, right? It's always about the, money-making scam. So, anyway, no, he should not, as a Sea Org member, as a regular routine Sea Org member, your ex-reg should not have had enough money to be buying elite statuses and for L. Ron Hubbard Hall. But it's a good guess you're making there that he's doing some kind of amends, and he's probably figured out how to either wrangle in some money or borrow some money or somehow work that out. I don't know. I don't even know who the guy is, but that's my broad generalized answer to that question. And I hope it gives some information as to, what's going on in Scientology with that. WW. Can you at some point explain, if you even know, why they open celebrity centers in various cities? LA seems the only logical place for one, and I believe it's the only one left. But I'm pretty sure I've read about the one in Portland, one in Nashville, Las Vegas, etc. It's so bizarre. Well, I'm a little surprised at you feeling it's so bizarre. Celebrity centers, let me clarify then what this is all about. Celebrity centers are designed not just for people who are in movies or TV. They're designed for VIPs of any caliber, any status, across the whole spectrum of the arts. Painters, musicians, writers, anybody who's really in the creative arts or is somehow a VIP. This could also include businessmen, high-powered, Wall Street guys. People who are in the public eye, who somehow have a public presence and power and influence. That's what CC is targeting, what the celebrity centers are after. And that's why there is a whole network of these organizations. Now, they have now been combined with the ideal org system. So you have in Las Vegas one organization. It's the Las Vegas Church of Scientology. But a celebrity center is attached to it. There's a little building that they use where they can service celebrities, give them a private little entrance and exit, so they don't have to mingle with the rabble, and can be treated as celebrities, as VIPs. They can be given the VIP treatment. So That you have in Las Vegas. I believe you have some component of that remaining in Portland, but I might be wrong about that. They might have shut that down. There was a celebrity center in New York. That function has probably been combined with the New York Ideal org. I don't think they have a separate setup for celebrities in New York anymore. And there was a celebrity center in Paris. And I'm not sure about the status of that one because I don't recall off the top of my head right now whether Paris has gone ideal or not. So, but the Celebrity Center function is basically to deliver services to the upper crust, so to speak, right? And even, and get even more, extract even more money from these people and utilize them as influencers to forward the message of Scientology. And that's why you have a president's office at Celebrity Center International, and they manage all the other celebrity centers. But now that whole thing is a little confused in terms of the management structure because of all the reasons I just said, where they're merging these organizations together. So no, LA is not the only logical place for a celebrity center. There, Nashville as well. That's right. I forgot about that one. That's also got a celebrity center component, right? Again, now it should be for obvious reasons. There are a ton of celebrities in Nashville, and the Nashville Church of Scientology, should be booming by appealing to and drawing in those celebrities. You got musicians, you have rappers, you have all kinds of art going on in Nashville, in Atlanta, in Los Angeles, Hollywood, certainly in New York, in London, in Paris, all throughout Europe. I'm sure you have centers, cultural centers, VIP type, centers in other countries where they could establish celebrity centers. I mean, the potential is huge there. The fact that Scientology doesn't take advantage of it pretty much gives their celebrity centers short shrift, if any attention at all, these days, kind of indicates just how bad off Scientology is really doing. They're just, even the celebrities they have, they don't utilize. They don't use them at all. Not like they used to, right? John Travolta used to stump for Scientology everywhere he went. He would never shut up about it. On the set, off the set, on camera, off camera. John Travolta was one of the flag bearers for Scientology. Tom Cruise was for a very brief period of time, and other celebrities have carried the water as well. So the Celebrity Center network does make sense to me as something Scientology, could and should be very interested in. But for whatever reason these days, not really a whole lot happening on the celebrity front. All you really get these days is pictures of Elizabeth Moss flipping off the camera, great imaging there, Elizabeth. Right? I mean, I think she's an awful representation of a Scientologist. I think Elizabeth Moss is the worst example ever of a celebrity Scientologist. But, that's the state of Scientology right now. There you go. Jonathan Perry, I was wondering, what's your opinion on hazing? A lot of people I've met felt abused, but a lot of them, especially in the military, feel like it's the best thing that ever happened to them. They consider it a test to see if they can trust you. If you break, they're going to worry that you won't have their back in a firefight. The hazing that goes on in college, I think, is ridiculous, though. But if you have any insights into the psychology of this ritual that seems to happen in every culture, I'd love to hear it. In some military units, when you earn your SEAL tab or wings, they will drive the pin into you by punching it. They aren't supposed to do that, but it still happens. And for some reason, anyone I've spoken to is proud to have had that happen. All right, Jonathan, thank you for this question. And what I want to say on this is I'm going to try to just be real simple here. This has to do with identification. This has to do with identity. Okay, this has to do with an individual in a group having the group identity. And hazing is a ritual by which you have experienced some kind of abuse or trauma or bad experience. You've had to endure something awful in order to prove your worth or your mettle, or in other words, show that you are a true group member and you have the gumption or guts or, whatever it takes, and the dedication and loyalty, those are the real words here, to be part of the group. You are demonstrating through the hazing ritual that you are a loyal group member who will keep the group secrets, put up with some level of abuse because you are dedicated. Okay? That's basically the bottom line to what that's all about. Now, can it be taken too far? Of course it can. Has it been taken too far where there's been actual injury and even death? Yes. And that is stupid, right? And that mostly happens in colleges, and that the college kids are just idiots when it comes to this kind of thing. But this is it's sort of a vague shadow of the kind of hazing that's going on that you refer to in the military, where there's a little bit more purpose to it. And let's go ahead and differentiate these things now, because as I've always said, context matters. Context is always the thing you use to judge whether something is good or bad, right or wrong, whatever, right? There are no broad general rules that always work for every context. So to say, well, let's just get rid of hazing altogether and we're never going to allow it under any circumstances ever, is an unrealistic expectation given human nature. People demand loyalty tests. Otherwise, they just don't know how to trust you. And you have to figure this out, because being part of a group and the whole in-group, out-group dynamic is that you're part of a group of people who they know you are on the same page they are. That's the whole point of being in a group. And so there are membership dues. There are things you have to, there's things you have to do, hoops you have to jump through. No matter what those hoops are, you get a job interview. That's jumping through some hoops. They don't just hire you. They don't just look at you and go, oh, okay, come on. They ask you questions first. They have to determine whether you're somebody who's going to be a good fit for this group. Hazing is another level of that, okay? And I'm not rationalizing or justifying all levels of hazing and talking about this. It's just, you asked what's the psychological thing going on here, and that's what's going on. So is it good or is it bad? Well, that's where context comes in. When you talk about somebody in a military context, you mentioned quite rightly in the question that, if you don't go along with the ritual, then they're not going to trust you to have their back in a firefight. That's actually a legit point. When you're going into a combat situation, when you're training for a combat situation, when you are in a culture of combat, the military is very much its own thing. And you have a group of people who have to trust one another in order to be an effective combat unit. How do you get each other's backs? Training, discipline, camaraderie, group activity, right? Teammanship, team drills, all that kind of thing. But, it's not really enough to do some kind of, fallback leap of faith or trust fall or that kind of, team activities that corporate retreats specialize in. That's a level of this, but there's not really, here's the difference. There's not really any pain involved when you're doing those kind of trust exercises. And if there's not some degree of sacrifice, then people aren't necessarily going to put a lot of value in your effort to show that you can be trustworthy. In other words, if you don't, have to endure some kind of awfulness, then was it really a test? Was it really proof that you really are loyal? And for human beings, the answer pretty routinely is no. There has to be some level of sacrifice. There has to be some level of pain. There has to be something you have to endure. In other words, you have to earn your place in this group. And like I said, in the military, you have life and death on the line. Now, I don't know that people really appreciate that very simple fact. A corporate office job, a religious group, a Boy Scout troop, even a martial arts dojo, life and death are not on the line in any of those situations. At least they shouldn't be. But in a military situation, they are. And that context matters. So they ramp up the psychology, the techniques that are utilized in that group to, hey, you got it. You're going to be one of us. you're going to have to earn it. You're going to have to be tough. You're going to have to be dedicated. You're going to have to be loyal to this team. And we're going to have to know that you can actually take some shellacking, because when the bullets start flying or the knives come out, or if, you know, when shit gets real, in other words, these guys have to know you're going to be there for them. So they have to know you're going to be willing to endure a little bit of awful so that everybody makes it out okay and comes home safely. When it's in that context, I think it makes more sense why those kind of hazing rituals would develop, and why people involved in them would even see them as necessary and defend their use in the practice. It kind of, as far as I'm concerned, what I've said here makes some degree of sense. That doesn't necessarily mean I believe that it's absolutely necessary that we have to haze everybody going into a combat unit. But I don't know that the people in that group are going to put up with anything less in order to trust their fellow members, their fellow group members. Right? It's one way of, during a peacetime situation or in a peaceful area, it's a way to exert some pain and some discipline and some, you know, like I said, some hoop jumping, in order to make sure that when things are not peaceful, everything's going to work according to plan anyway. Anyway, that's kind of my initial thoughts on that, Jonathan. I hope that helps clarify at least how I'm seeing that. And again, it's not a matter that I think it is or isn't necessary. I think you could do without it. But do they think you can do without it? You know, that's the real question as to why hazing develops in a group in the first place, right? It's a very organically evolved thing. Nobody has to go in and start ordering this. People just do it. And you see with people who don't have fully developed brains in non-combat situations like colleges, they will, you know, when drugs get involved and alcohol gets involved, they lose all common sense and they take it to, you know, ridiculous extremes, and people end up getting hurt. And that, of course, I completely disagree with. I think that's nonsensical. The idea of hazing in a college environment is actually pretty stupid. And again, that's where context, I'm just going to keep stressing that, matters so much. And that's why I can say, well, in a military thing, I can kind of see it. In a non-military, non-life or death situation, I'm a little bit more like, wait a minute, what are you guys doing and why? Right? What are your justifications for it? Because it doesn't really make a lot of sense. Anyway, there you go. Douglas Davidson. What is the quickest way to see the dysfunction in Scientology? Clearly, going to the org would require a lot of time and money before you could see the problems. Is there a quick way to show someone the problems? Would stopping on the road that goes through gold base work? Along with that, what risks, if any, do you see with confronting the problems quickly? Okay, thanks for this question, Doug. I don't know that stopping on the road through gold base would do much of anything for anybody, because you're not going to really see anything except a security guard booth. There's not really anything there to see. But if you, I think if I were pressed for time or somehow in a situation where I needed to do something right away with somebody, you know, I don't know, I would just take them down to the org and show them the course rooms. I mean, the places are ghost towns. If these orgs are supposed to be big, booming, expanding, wonderful things, if L. Ron Hubbard built a better mousetrap and the whole world is supposed to be beating the door down to get to it, then where is everybody? Why is Scientology such a struggle? Why is it so hard to even pay the staff? Why is it so hard to even keep the doors open? Why can't they deliver any services right now? Why is it that Miscavige enforces COVID policies when the rest of the world has moved on? And I mean really moved on. And why are they so draconian? What is that all about? There are so many questions you could ask a person that are just straight up in their face, right in front of them, that you don't really have to do too many deep dives or go into Scientology minutia too much in order to wake somebody up a little bit. But it does take some balls to sit and confront somebody with these kind of questions who's in a Scientology headspace, or any cultist in their cult headspace, right? Because they're in a place where they're not going to question what's going on. They're not gonna be willing to critically examine what's happening, and that's the real struggle. It's not a matter of what is it should I show them. It's trying to get them in a frame of mind where they're willing to even ask a question in the first place. Once they start asking questions, believe me, they'll come up with their own questions that they are wondering about. That's the job you have in confronting or dealing with somebody who's in an extremist headspace, is you got to get them to start asking themselves the questions, right? And that requires compassion, tolerance, understanding, a supportive attitude, a friendly attitude, right? At least kindness. That's what it takes, right? You got to get the person to open up. And we've talked about this so many times in so many ways, but that's my answer, right? Is that's what I think is the more correct approach there for how you're dealing with somebody in that headspace. And I hope that makes sense, given everything else we've talked about on this channel for so long about this. I'm sure it does. So there you go. All right, let's do some flash answers. Heather Myers. Any suggestions for finishing our degrees online for us other middle-aged ancient people? Actually, yeah, my first piece of advice is just do it. Just go Nike on it, right? Just commit, just make it happen and do it. The other thing I will say is I would recommend doing a part-time program. I did it full-time, and that was stressful. It was really stressful. It would have been a lot easier if I had let it drag out a bit longer and just taken it on a part-time basis. But that's me, right? I have a job. I have all this stuff I'm doing with this channel and other things I'm doing in my life. So it was rough, right? And I had to get a few extensions along the way in order to finish the program successfully. So that's a piece of advice I would have for you, is maybe really think about the scheduling of what you're going to be doing and committing to, and make sure that it's within realistic confines. Because I think I gave myself an awful lot of unneeded pressure by committing to a full-time schedule. So there you go. Raymond Franklin. Chris, do you know if there's any relationship between the Scientology leadership training and Choice Leadership University in Las Vegas or other EST and Landmark Forum-related leadership training centers? Hey, Raymond, thanks for the question. As far as I know, there is zero connection, none whatsoever, between anything with Scientology and anything with EST or Landmark Forum. These are two completely different activities, not connected in any way formally as organizations, even though the base fundamental dogma that they use is the same. Charles Sexton. Does Scientology seize passports of foreign nationals? If you work for the Sea Org and you show up at Flag or Clearwater or Los Angeles or whatever, or I'm sure in other Sea Org bases, they will take your passports if they want to. And that's just standard practice, right? Everybody on the Free Winds, for example, has their passports collected. So that's what I can say about that. All right, that was our show for this week. Thank you very much for coming around and listening to me gab on like this. Again, I will remind you to please hit that subscribe button. And of course, if you are finding my show entertaining, informative, and educational, and that is what I'm trying to do here, if I'm succeeding, please consider supporting this channel. I really could use your support, and it really is easy to do. You just go to my Patreon page and sign up. There's a $1, there's a $5, you don't have to do a lot, get me a cup of coffee every month, that kind of thing. There's also one-offs you can do through PayPal or through Venmo if you want to send some love that way. Links to all of this are below in the description section to this and every other video I produce. All right, guys, I will see you next week. Bye-bye.